By every known rule of human development, this moment should not exist. Along the lower Euphrates, where the river breaks into marsh and reed, a city is already dying the moment it is born. Uruk, not a village, not a camp, a true city, tens of thousands of people pressed together in mud brick walls, surrounded by nothing that should sustain them. No forests, no stone, no metal, only silt, water and heat that cracks skin by noon. History insists this should have ended here. No rational society survives in a floodplain that drowns without warning and starves without mercy. Crops fail, rivers change course, disease spreads faster than order, and yet, against every statistical expectation, Uruk does not collapse. It organises, it counts, it remembers, and it writes. This is not writing born from poetry or leisure. This is writing born from pressure, the kind that war produces before war exists. The kind that comes when a society realises that forgetting is a death sentence. The earliest clay tablets are not myths. They are inventories, rations, tallies of grain and beer, recorded with ruthless precision. Every wedge pressed into wet clay represents control over chaos, someone deciding who eats and who does not, someone deciding how long the city can hold. By every known rule of survival, this system should fail. There are too many mouths, too few resources, too much dependence on a river that can rise 6 meters overnight and erase an entire harvest. Yet the tablets keep appearing, stacked, catalogued, stored deliberately in rooms that serve no religious function. These are not offerings to gods, they are weapons against entropy. The people who pressed these marks knew something most civilizations learn too late. Memory is power. And power, once centralized, changes the shape of humanity permanently. What makes these records disturbing is not their age, it is their confidence. They do not sound like a people discovering order for the first time. They sound like administrators maintaining a system already old. Titles exist, roles are fixed, labour is assumed, the language is mature, technical, unforgiving. There is no hesitation in the hand that presses the stylus. History should see experimentation here, mistakes, trial and error. Instead, it sees execution, which raises an impossible question. Who taught them? Because societies do not leap from scattered farming huts to bureaucratic megacities without blood, famine, and prolonged failure. And yet the archaeological layers show acceleration, not collapse. Expansion, not retreat. A city growing faster than its environment allows. Something is wrong with the timeline. The tablets themselves betray it. They do not begin with origins, they assume them. They reference systems, deities, and hierarchies without introduction, as if the reader is expected to already know. As if this is not the start of the story, but a continuation after something unspeakable has already occurred. Even the gods appear strangely administrative. These are not distant cosmic creators. They allocate land, they assign labour, they demand quotas, they descend, not in fire, but in process. The divine language mirrors the language of management, command, and extraction. By every psychological rule of mythology, gods should reflect nature's mystery. These gods reflect a bureaucracy, and bureaucracies do not emerge from wonder, they emerge from control. Uruk's growth exacts a price. Labourers work until collapse, canal maintenance never ends. One breach in the levee can drown a district overnight. Disease follows density. Rebellion simmers where rations thin, yet the system holds, not because it is humane, but because it is enforced. Somewhere within these tablets is the quiet admission that humanity has entered a new phase, life measured, quantified and owned, individuals reduced to outputs, families to units, survival no longer communal but conditional. This is not the birth of civilization as a triumph, it is civilization as a siege. The city walls rise, not only to keep enemies out, but to keep people in. Once inside the system, escape becomes impossible. You eat because you are recorded. You live because your name exists in clay. Erase the name and the person vanishes. By every known rule of early human society, this level of abstraction should be centuries away. Yet here it is, fully formed, pressed into mud by hands that understood exactly what they were doing. And history uncomfortably has no explanation for where that understanding came from. By every known rule of settlement, this is the moment the city should fracture. The Euphrates does not negotiate. It floods when it chooses, withdraws when it pleases, and leaves behind salt that poisons fields for generations. Entire districts of Uruk vanish beneath water without warning. Mudbrick dissolves. Storehouses collapse. Grain rots before it can be counted. No rational commander would attempt to hold a population of this size in such a landscape. Retreat would be logical. Dispersal would be humane. Instead, the response is escalation. Canals are widened, straightened, forced into alignment by tens of thousands of labourers working knee-deep in sludge under a sun that kills quietly. Levees rise higher every season, not because they are sufficient or efficient, but because failure is unacceptable. Each year demands more hands, more food, more coordination. This is not adaptation, it is defiance. The tablets record it with chilling detachment. Numbers increase where harvests should shrink. Labour quotas rise as mortality rises with them. The system does not slow when conditions worsen, it tightens. By every known rule of human behaviour, desperation should lead to chaos. Instead, it produces obedience. Something has changed in how people understand themselves. Survival is no longer personal, it is procedural. You live if the system functions, you die if it does not. And the system demands loyalty not to kin, but to structure. Names appear beside tasks, tasks beside rations, rations beside punishment. This is not the language of cooperation, it is the language of command. The river's violence forces innovation that should take centuries. Standardized measurements, predictive accounting, rotational labour schedules, the earliest signs of something that resembles planning beyond a single season. History insists this level of foresight requires generations of trial and collapse. But Uruk does not collapse, it accelerates, which means someone, somewhere understands the river better than the river understands itself. The priests claim divine instruction, the administrators claim necessity, the workers claim nothing at all. They dig, haul, and die in silence, their existence reduced to marks in clay that outlive them by millennia. The gods too change in this environment. They are no longer forces of storm or fertility alone. They become overseers, inspectors, owners of land parcels and labour pools. Offerings are no longer gifts, they are payments. Divinity becomes contractual. By every known psychological rule, belief should comfort in catastrophe. Here, belief disciplines. The city's expansion pushes beyond sustainability, yet the leadership behaves as if retreat is impossible. New districts rise on reclaimed marshland that sinks slowly beneath its own weight. Foundations crack, walls lean. Repairs never stop, the people live inside permanent emergency, and still the tablets remain calm. There is no panic in the records, no reflection, no doubt, only adjustments. More workers assigned, more grain redistributed, losses absorbed as if human life is an expendable resource, because within this system it is. This is the moment humanity crosses a line it will never uncross. For the first time, large numbers of people are sacrificed not to a god, but to an idea, continuity, the belief that the system must survive, even if the individuals within it do not. By every known rule of ethics, this should provoke revolt. Yet revolt is absent, which suggests fear deeper than hunger. Fear not just of punishment, but of erasure. To exist outside the records is to not exist at all. To flee the city is to abandon identity, ration, protection, and memory. The walls do not merely enclose space, they define reality. Uruk survives the river not because it conquers nature, but because it redefines what survival means. Life becomes conditional, humanity becomes quantifiable, and once quantified, it can be controlled. This is not resilience. It is transformation under pressure so intense that older ways of being human simply break. History often celebrates this moment as progress, but standing here, ankle deep in floodwater and silt, surrounded by the dead who kept the canals running, it feels less like advancement and more like surrender to a system that demands everything and explains nothing. By every known rule of early conflict, this confrontation should be small, brief, and forgettable. A skirmish over grazing land, a seasonal raid, something resolved with loss, then distance. Instead, it becomes something else entirely. The tablets change tone. For the first time, they stop speaking only of grain and labour. New marks appear, terms for weapons, units, and organised violence. Not heroic language, not epic verse, administrative language, counts, assignments, losses. War enters the record not as chaos, but as a managed process. No rational society invents warfare at this scale without first collapsing internally. Yet Uruk does not fracture. It externalizes its pressure. The same system that disciplined flood and famine now turns outward. The enemy is unnamed, perhaps deliberately. What matters is not who they are, but that they exist. An outside force against which unity becomes mandatory. Fear is redirected. Dissent is reclassified as disloyalty. By every known rule of psychology, prolonged stress should weaken cohesion. Here it hardens it. Men are organized into units not by kinship but by function. Spears standardized, shields measured, rations calculated to sustain marching bodies rather than families. This is not tribal combat. This is institutional violence. And it emerges fully formed. There are no experimental phases in the record, no gradual learning curve. The logistics appear suddenly, precise and unforgiving. Someone understands that wars are won before the first blow, through supply, discipline, and replacement. History insists this knowledge is cumulative. The tablets insist otherwise. Casualties are recorded as numbers, not names. Losses are anticipated. Reinforcements allocated in advance. The dead are not mourned in clay, they are subtracted. This is the moment humanity learns to kill at scale without looking itself in the eye. The psychological shift is irreversible. Violence becomes abstract. Distance grows between action and consequence. A commander moves marks on clay and men die miles away. By every known ethical framework, this should cause hesitation. Instead, it causes efficiency. The city's survival becomes justification for everything. Labour shortages are filled with captives. Borders expand. Resource zones are secured by force rather than negotiation. War is no longer an interruption, it is a tool. And tools are improved. The gods once again adapt. They now bless campaigns, not morality, not restraint, victory. Failure is interpreted as insufficient devotion, not flawed strategy. The system protects itself by redefining blame. Inside Uruk, life tightens further. Food allocations favour soldiers and administrators. Civilians absorb scarcity. The burden shifts downward, as it always does. Yet there is no record of revolt, which suggests that by this point, resistance is unthinkable. The system has taught its people that survival exists only within its boundaries. To oppose it is to step into oblivion. By every known rule of human dignity, this is where the story should fracture. But it doesn't. It continues, colder, more organised, more confident. War does not weaken Uruk. It validates it, confirms its worldview. The city survives because it dominates. It dominates because it is organised. And it is organised because it learned, early and brutally, how to turn human lives into manageable variables. This is not the birth of warfare as legend would tell it. This is warfare as accounting. And once violence is reduced to numbers, there is no upper limit to what can be justified. Only calculations, only thresholds, only acceptable loss. History often marks this era as the dawn of civilization's power, but power here feels less like strength and more like momentum, something set in motion that no one inside the system can stop even if they wanted to. By every known rule of agriculture, this year should have broken Uruk. The river retreated early, leaving salted silt where crops once grew. Grain stores dwindled, livestock succumbed to thirst. The sun, relentless and indifferent, burned the fields to dust. Hints of pestilence follow, and whispers of starvation spread faster than any official decree. No rational planner would continue to feed a city this large under these conditions. Survival would demand dispersal, smaller communities, even surrender to nature's dictates. History shows time and again that famine fractures empires before armies can. Yet Uruk reacts with precision, not panic. The tablets chronicle ration distributions down to the last fraction of grain. Names are assigned priority, tasks are reallocated. Workers who once laboured at canal repairs are shifted to fields, regardless of their knowledge. Inefficiency is punished silently. Death is calculated, not mourned. By every known rule of human endurance, this should have resulted in mass collapse. Instead, it strengthens hierarchy. Somewhere in the shadowed rooms where clay tablets are stacked, administrators make decisions that guarantee survival for some, an inevitable death for others. The weak, the sick, the unregistered, they vanish quietly. Their absence is noted, not lamented. Humanity itself becomes an algorithm. Inputs, outputs, losses. The river, once a threat, is now weaponized. Water distribution is managed with a cold mathematical rigor. Every drop diverted, measured, catalogued. Entire districts suffer shortages so that other districts may live. Ethics bend to necessity, or perhaps disappear entirely. The famine creates an unspoken social contract. Compliance equals survival, dissent equals extinction, and the city enforces it ruthlessly. Families break under pressure. Children endure days without proper nourishment. Workers collapse in the mud only to be replaced seamlessly. Names removed from records, bodies disappear without trace. By every known psychological principle, despair should provoke chaos. But chaos does not emerge. Uruk absorbs the pressure. It reshapes it. It translates death into function. The gods inscribed in the tablets now demand endurance as proof of loyalty. Offerings do not restore fertility. They reinforce obedience. Prayers are not answered. They are reminders that survival is transactional. Meanwhile, outsiders, neighbouring settlements, watch and wonder. They have less organisation, less resilience. Entire regions crumble under comparable famine, yet Uruk remains unbroken, almost unnatural in its persistence. What drives this strange immunity is not chance, not divine favour, but the meticulous orchestration of human labour, calculation and coercion. Within the city, the cost is invisible to the architects of survival, but all too real for those who live it. A mother sees her child vanish from the ration list. A worker watches companions collapse in exhaustion, unrecorded. The tablets mark names, quantities, dates, and losses, but not grief. The system does not grieve, it executes. By every known rule of morality, this is monstrous. Yet by every known rule of survival, it is genius. Famine exposes the fragility of human society, but Uruk has learned to treat fragility as a variable, not a weakness. Lives are expendable, but continuity is absolute. Every collapse is anticipated, every shortage converted into strategy. And still, the city persists. The air hangs heavy with the smell of drying mud and sweat. Every survivor feels the unspoken pressure of the system pressing upon them. Hunger has become obedience. Starvation has become loyalty, and every footstep in the mud carries the weight of a lesson older than any scribe. Survival is not guaranteed by strength, but by submission to order. By every known rule of human compassion, this should feel like hell, and it does. By every known rule of contagion, this is the moment Uruk should have collapsed. Disease spreads faster than planning. Rats, stagnant water, crowded streets, all combine to create a breeding ground for death. Bodies accumulate. Fever sweeps neighbourhoods. The stench of decay rises, relentless and suffocating. Panic spreads faster than logic. No rational administrator would allow tens of thousands to remain packed in mud-brick enclosures under these conditions. History insists such events shatter societies. Small villages vanish, larger cities fragment. But Uruk does not falter. It adapts, it calculates. It absorbs mortality as though it were another ledger entry. The tablets grow darker, more precise. Not poetry, not lamentation, but inventories of loss. Names removed, spaces cleared, measures adjusted. Every death is accounted for. Every survivor reallocated. Labour schedules shift. Quarantine, if it exists, is not mercy, it is strategy. By every known rule of epidemiology, containment should fail. Yet the city moves like a machine, relentless and efficient. Certain districts are sacrificed to preserve others. Entire classes of labourers vanish quietly, their absence expected, their disappearance systematically managed. The plague does not simply kill, it teaches. Survival becomes not a matter of strength or luck, but of registration, adherence, and alignment with the system. Those outside the records are already condemned. Those inside are measured, optimized, preserved for function rather than humanity. Fear becomes another tool. Panic is channeled into compliance. Officials who might once have hesitated now act with brutal clarity. Every ration distributed, every order given, every tablet pressed into wet clay reinforces the principle: survival is conditional, it is not mercy. It is control. The gods, once observers, now issue decrees interpreted as policy. Healing rituals are less supplication and more enforcement. Those who obey the system are spared. Those who do not, removed. Death is not divine judgment. It is operational consequence. By every known moral standard, this is monstrous. Entire families vanish. Neighborhoods are depopulated. Children starve while elders survive, only because the ledger demands it. Humanity, in its natural empathy, has been rewritten into a cold calculus. And still, Uruk endures. The streets grow quiet. Silent witnesses mark every failure and every survival. The city has learned to anticipate catastrophe before it strikes, to absorb it, to transform suffering into routine. Life becomes a ledger entry. Death, a predictable variable. The plague, another calculation in an ever-expanding system. By every known rule of human psychology, survivors should crumble beneath the weight of grief. Yet obedience persists. Loyalty persists. Fear and survival entwine, and the people march, carry, build, and count. Not for God, not for glory, but because the system demands it. History later celebrates Uruk's endurance as miraculous, but standing amid the silent streets, the emaciated bodies, the endless mud and clay, it feels less like triumph than inevitability. The city has learned that continuity requires sacrifice, that life itself is negotiable, and that mortality is merely another input into a machine far larger than any individual. By every known rule of compassion, this should have ended in despair. By every known rule of survival, it has just begun. By every known rule of oppression, this should have been the moment Uruk fractures completely. The city has endured famine, plague, and unrelenting labour. Streets are littered with corpses. Workers collapse under exhaustion. Fear has been refined into obedience, but tension accumulates like a storm cloud. One spark should have set the city ablaze, and yet the spark is contained. The tablets, cold and merciless, note discrepancies, missing rations, delayed labour, minor infractions. Nothing heroic, nothing symbolic, just numbers, times, quantities. Every attempt at resistance is dissected, measured, and countered with procedural efficiency. The city does not flinch, does not negotiate, it does not hesitate. By every known rule of early revolt, the oppressed should have rallied. Families should have fought alongside each other. Citizens should have overwhelmed authority with sheer desperation. But here, resistance is abstracted into compliance or elimination. The leaders act with precision. Task forces are deployed to districts showing unrest. Workers are removed from the rolls. Names vanish from the records. Public punishment is rare. The threat of bureaucratic erasure is enough. Survival hinges not on courage, but on conformity to schedules and entries in clay. Every attempt at rebellion collapses before it begins, not with swords or bloodshed, but with calculation. The system anticipates dissent as though it were a natural disaster, predictable, unavoidable, yet manageable. Deaths and removals are encoded as data points. Morale, irrelevant. Fear, sufficient. By every known rule of morality, this is unspeakable. Children grow up in terror of absence from the record. Parents watch their peers disappear silently. Entire neighborhoods are reshaped without warning. Memory becomes collective obedience, enforced invisibly. Yet Uruk survives, not because of devotional belief, but because the city itself has become a weapon. Its infrastructure is both prison and shield. Canals, walls, and streets are optimized for control. Workers cannot flee because the system stretches into every aspect of life: work, water, food, record, identity. The rebellion exposes a truth few acknowledge. Survival is not earned by skill, strength, or courage, but by alignment with structure. Life is conditional, death is procedural. The city's logic does not waver. Its continuity is absolute. Even the gods inscribed in clay are silent here. Their presence is implied through authority and ritual, but they intervene only symbolically. Human obedience has replaced divine action. Faith is leveraged, not actualized. By every known rule of human psychology, the oppressed should feel hope, and yet they do not. Hope is dangerous because it invites failure. Only calculation, repetition, and record-keeping ensure continued existence. Every small act of defiance is neutralized before it can threaten the whole. By every known rule of history, this moment should fracture human dignity. And it does, but it does not fracture survival. The city transforms suffering into efficiency, hunger into productivity, fear into order. Resistance is erased before it exists, leaving only a population trained to obey without thought, guided by tablets that outlive their flesh. Here, in the silent aftermath of failed revolt, Uruk reaches a level of control that should be impossible for a human city. Every action, every omission, every breath is accounted for. Individuals are absorbed into systems larger than themselves, subordinated to continuity itself. By every known rule of compassion, this should feel inhuman. By every known rule of endurance, it is human history as it has never been seen. By every known rule of warfare, this is where the city should fall. Word spreads that a coalition of neighbouring settlements, armed and desperate, marches toward Uruk. Numbers far exceed what the city's defences can hold. Walls, though massive, cannot withstand concentrated assault. Siege engines, unrecorded but inevitable, will batter gates. Morale, already strained from famine and plague, teeters on the edge of collapse. No rational general would defend under such circumstances. History shows overwhelming force shatters even the most disciplined defenders. Yet Uruk prepares, not with panic, but with meticulous calculation. The tablets detail the organisation of every unit. Men are assigned to walls based on experience and endurance. Supplies are rationed with lethal precision. Strategic reserves are deployed where the attack is expected, yet unseen to the invaders. Death is anticipated. Victory is optional, but order is mandatory. By every known rule of early battle, defenders should crumble under pressure. Yet the city becomes a living machine of resistance. Every arrow, every spear, every block of mud brick functions as part of a system designed to maximize survival and minimize chaos. The city does not fight with heroics, it fights with efficiency. The invaders, numerous and confident, underestimate the city's resolve. They assume desperation equals disorder, fatigue equals surrender. By every known rule of logic, they should succeed within hours, if not minutes. Instead, they encounter methodical precision. Archers rotate shifts with clockwork timing. Gates are reinforced at exact intervals. Flooded canals, designed as deterrents, channel attackers into narrow lanes. Every failure is anticipated and corrected in real time. Losses among the defenders are expected, absorbed into a ledger of survival. History insists overwhelming numbers should decide the outcome. Uruk insists otherwise. The city converts scarcity into strategy. Weak points become traps. Exhaustion becomes defense. Fear becomes weaponized. By every known psychological rule, attackers should feel invincible. And they do, until the first wave collapses into a canal filled with mud and bodies. Confusion spreads, coordination falters. Panic emerges where logic predicted confidence. The city absorbs blows like a wound sealed from within. Inside, the leadership acts with absolute detachment. Decisions are not moral, not emotional. They are operational. Every district is monitored, every unit replenished, every tablet updated. Survival of the whole outweighs any single life. By every known ethical framework, this is monstrous. By every known tactical framework, it is flawless. The gods, inscribed in countless clay tablets, do not intervene visibly. Their power is encoded into ritual, labour quotas, and fear. The city, not divine favour, decides the outcome. And yet, even as the assault rages, the defenders feel the unbearable weight of inevitability. They fight not for glory, but because the system demands it. Their survival depends on the city functioning like clockwork. Personal desire is irrelevant. Individual loss is irrelevant. Every life is a variable, every death a calculation. By every known rule of human history, this should be the last stand. By every known rule of military science, the city should be erased in hours. But Uruk endures. It is not a triumph. It is a suspension of disbelief imposed on reality itself. The city, battered, bloodied and unyielding, has transformed chaos into obedience, fear into armour, scarcity into strategy. By every known rule of survival, this is impossible. Yet here it stands. By every known rule of environmental collapse, this year should have shattered Uruk. The Euphrates recedes beyond expectation. Canals dry, wells fail, and marshes vanish into dust. Crops wither in place, livestock starve, heat presses down like an unrelenting fist. Civilization in this climate without water should crumble within months. No rational planner can sustain tens of thousands under such conditions. Every precedent shows that famine follows drought quickly, panic spreads, and cities fragment. Yet Uruk persists, not by luck, not by miracle, but by calculation. The tablets record water with precision bordering on obsession. Pools are allocated by district, neighbourhood, even individual household. Rations are carefully measured. Labour is reprioritised to maintain essential canals while less critical tasks are suspended. The system does not adapt slowly. It adapts instantly, ruthlessly, and without hesitation. By every known rule of human psychology, desperation should corrode obedience. Hunger should provoke rebellion. Exhaustion should fracture loyalty. Yet in Uruk, the opposite occurs. Compliance intensifies under pressure. Survival is no longer hope. It is execution of assigned tasks. The city enforces hierarchy invisibly. Names are removed from lists if rations are insufficient, effectively erasing people from the system. Death, calculated in advance, becomes routine. Families are split, labour redistributed, children sacrificed to the ledger. Human life is quantified, and nothing exists outside the calculation. Even the priests, interpreters of the divine, act mechanically. Rituals of supplication are performed less to appease gods than to enforce conformity. Divine authority is translated into procedural compliance. Those who follow the rules survive, those who do not vanish. By every known rule of morality, this is monstrous. The city transforms catastrophe into method, suffering into obedience, famine into a test of endurance rather than a challenge to existence. And yet, it functions. The drought, which should have ended the city, becomes a proving ground for the system itself. The people internalize the logic of survival. They do not question the calculations. They perform them. They become instruments of continuity. Hunger and thirst are harnessed into efficiency. Fear is converted into compliance. Exhaustion becomes ritualized labor. Every act, every breath, every motion is absorbed into the machinery of survival. By every known rule of history, environmental catastrophe destroys civilization. By every known rule of statistics, the city should fracture and scatter. But Uruk does neither. It survives, relentless, calculating and unyielding. Even the outside world notices. Neighbouring settlements collapse, villages vanish, empires shrink. Entire regions succumb to drought, yet Uruk endures almost unnaturally. Its survival is not celebrated. It is studied, feared and whispered about as if the city possesses knowledge beyond human comprehension. By every known rule of human endurance, this should be the breaking point, and yet the city does not break. It persists. It persists not because of its walls, its weapons, or even its water, but because it has internalized catastrophe itself. Every failure is anticipated, every variable is managed, every human life is reduced to function, every loss accounted for, every survivor incorporated into a system that has become greater than the sum of its parts. And by every known rule of natural order, this should be impossible. Yet, here it stands. By every known rule of disease, this is where Uruk should have collapsed entirely. A new illness spreads through densely packed streets. Fever, pustules, and vomiting strike indiscriminately. Children, elders, and labourers all fall. The city's compact layout ensures that contagion spreads faster than any ration distribution or isolation plan could contain. No rational society survives a plague of this scale without external aid, retreat, or radical population control. History shows that urban centres confronted with such epidemics fragment, leaving death and panic in their wake. Yet Uruk adapts as if instinctively, absorbing mortality into its bureaucracy rather than succumbing to it. The tablets record infection with the same cold precision as grain or labour. Every sick individual is noted, every household accounted for. Quarantine is imposed not for compassion but for continuity. Certain districts are abandoned strategically. Entire families removed from the ledger to protect the greater system. The city does not mourn, it calculates. By every known rule of psychology, fear should provoke rebellion. Panic should drive people into the streets, overwhelming authorities. Hunger, exhaustion, and disease should erode loyalty. Yet obedience intensifies. Survival is no longer about hope, it is about adherence to the system. The gods are invoked, but only symbolically. Rituals are performed to channel fear into compliance. Divine intervention is assumed, yet invisible. Human action, measured and relentless, becomes the primary force against the plague. Death is expected, managed, and incorporated into ongoing calculations. By every known ethical standard, this is monstrous. The city systematically sacrifices the vulnerable to maintain overall survival. Children die to preserve adults. Sick labourers are removed to protect essential workforces. Names disappear from the tablets as if erasure equates to disappearance, and in many ways it does. Humanity is quantified, its individual value reduced to survival utility. The epidemic does not pause life, it reorganises it. Work continues in precise rotations. Water and food allocations are adjusted instantly. Soldiers remain on duty despite illness. Structures are maintained, canals cleared, and ration distribution recalculated daily. The city moves with mechanical precision. By every known rule of historical epidemics, this should have ended Uruk's dominion. Neighbouring regions fall, populations scatter, and cultures collapse, yet Uruk endures, almost unnaturally. Its survival is a product not of luck, not of divine favour, but of ruthless organisation and the subordination of humanity to systemic necessity. Inside the city, fear is omnipresent. Every resident knows that survival is conditional, determined not by courage or morality, but by registration, labour, and obedience. Every deviation from protocol risks removal from the ledger, and removal from existence itself. The plague amplifies this lesson. By every known rule of endurance, the population should crumble beneath the pressure of relentless mortality. Yet it does not. It persists. It performs. It survives. The city absorbs catastrophe as though it were designed to do nothing else. Every death becomes part of a pattern, every loss accounted for, every survivor incorporated into the system. Individual lives are variables, collective survival is absolute. By every known rule of natural order, such resilience is impossible, and yet Uruk persists. By every known rule of oppression, this is where Uruk should have fractured. Generations of labourers exhausted from famine, plague, and relentless work should have erupted in fury. Streets should have been barricaded, walls scaled, gates torn down. History shows that cumulative pressure of this magnitude inevitably triggers revolt. Yet Uruk reacts not with panic but with mechanical precision. The tablets record dissent not with emotion but with cold numbers. Missing labourers, delayed rations, minor infractions. Resistance is quantified. Punishment is administered administratively. Names vanish from rolls. Districts are monitored for anomalies. Every act of rebellion is predicted, contained and neutralized before it can ripple outward. By every known rule of psychology, despair should fuel uprising. Fear should drive people to action. Exhaustion should erode loyalty. Yet compliance intensifies. Survival is no longer a personal choice. It is a function of adherence to the system. Leadership acts without hesitation. Task forces are deployed to rebellious districts. Workers are removed from rations lists, effectively erasing them from the city's protection. Public executions are rare. The threat of erasure suffices. Every disappearance reinforces obedience. Every act of compliance validates the system. The gods, inscribed in countless clay tablets, are silent. Their authority is implied, not enacted. Faith has been translated into enforcement. Survival depends on adherence to ritual, labour and record-keeping, not divine intervention. By every known ethical standard, this is monstrous. Families are split, children starve, elders disappear, all in the name of continuity. Individual lives are expendable, but the city endures. Human life is reduced to function, each existence measured against the demands of the system. And yet the rebellion does more than fail. It teaches. Fear becomes internalized, compliance becomes reflexive, hunger and suffering are transformed into obedience. Every movement, every breath, every labouring body becomes part of the machine that sustains the city. By every known rule of history, this should have fractured human dignity, and it does, but it does not fracture survival. The city converts suffering into efficiency, chaos into order, despair into productivity. Outside observers, neighbouring settlements, are bewildered. Their villages collapse under similar stress. Uruk thrives almost unnaturally. Its survival is no miracle, but the result of meticulous control over every variable: population, labour, resources, and fear. By every known rule of psychology, the oppressed should resist. By every known rule of logistics, the city should collapse under cumulative crises. Yet it does neither. Inside the city, individuals move through the streets like shadows of themselves. Hunger and fear sharpen precision, not rebellion. Labour is relentless. Obedience is instinct. Every life is absorbed into the ledger, every loss accounted for, every survival conditional. By every known rule of human endurance, this should have been the final test. By every known rule of survival, it is only another layer of proof. Uruk has learned to thrive where all else fails. By every known rule of warfare, this is where the city should fall. A coalition of neighbouring city-states armed with iron-tipped weapons and reinforced by thousands of warriors surrounds Uruk. Their numbers outmatch the defenders 3-1. Siege engines begin to hammer the gates. The air is thick with smoke, dust, and the cries of the dying. History predicts total annihilation. Yet Uruk responds with an uncanny precision that defies logic. The tablets describe defensive assignments in meticulous detail. Rotations of archers, supply drops, reinforcement schedules, water rationing. Every man knows his place, every action anticipated, every failure absorbed into the system without panic. Death is expected, but survival is procedural. The city does not fight with heroics, it fights with unrelenting calculation. By every known rule of siegecraft, defenders should exhaust quickly. Supplies should dwindle, morale should collapse. But the city has already internalized scarcity. Hunger and fatigue are variables, not obstacles. Workers and soldiers follow protocols that anticipate exhaustion, distributing effort efficiently to sustain operations for months. The invaders, confident in their numerical advantage, advance methodically and fail. Canals have been flooded, forcing attackers into narrow, lethal channels. Mud, debris, and traps slow every advance. The city does not counterattack, it absorbs, constrains, and punishes. Every assault is anticipated and neutralized before it escalates. By every known rule of human psychology, the attackers should feel invincible. Pride should carry them into reckless exposure. Instead, confusion and fear spread among their ranks. Orders are delayed. Coordination falters. Panic takes root where the city has planned for it. Losses mount faster than reinforcements can replace them. Inside, the leadership acts without hesitation. Decisions are not moral, they are operational. Every district monitored, every unit resupplied, every casualty logged. Human life is secondary to continuity. By every known ethical rule, this is monstrous. By every known military rule, it is flawless. The gods, though present in ritual, do not intervene. Authority is encoded into labour, fear, and the ledger. Victory is human, methodical, and inevitable, not divine. The city itself has become the weapon. Its streets, walls, and canals are all instruments of calculated survival. By every known rule of ethics, survival under these conditions should be impossible. By every known rule of strategy, the city should be erased. Yet Uruk endures, absorbing the siege into its system, neutralizing chaos before it can spread. Hunger, disease, and exhaustion are all incorporated as variables. The people fight not for glory, not for honor, but because the system demands it. Obedience, registration, and labor become the ultimate defense. Every act is necessary. Every life is expendable but accounted for. Every district functions as both shield and engine. By every known rule of human history, this should have been the final battle. Yet Uruk does not fall. It survives not through luck, not through divine favour, but through the cold, absolute logic of order imposed upon chaos. The city has transformed catastrophe into structure, fear into discipline, and death into the sustainability. By every known rule of hydrology, this event should have obliterated the city. The Euphrates swells beyond precedent, surging past levees, overflowing canals, and inundating entire districts. Mud brick walls collapse under the weight of water. Grain stores are lost, livestock perish, and the streets become rivers of death. History teaches that urban centres built on floodplains, without modern engineering, are always vulnerable to such deluges. Yet Uruk survives, not by chance, not by miracle, but through meticulous planning and brutal enforcement. The tablets record the crisis with cold precision. Water levels are measured. Districts are prioritised for reinforcement. Labourers are reassigned instantly, pumps redirected, channels dug, levees reinforced. Deaths are anticipated, losses absorbed. Human life is accounted for but expendable. The city functions as a single, unyielding organism. By every known rule of human behaviour, panic should have erupted. Families should have fled. Streets should have emptied in chaos. Morale should have collapsed under the relentless pressure of catastrophe. Instead, compliance intensifies. Survival is no longer hope, it is execution of orders. Every citizen has a role. Every action has purpose. The system itself becomes the lifeline. Even the gods present in ritual and tablet inscriptions remain abstract. Their influence is symbolic. Relief does not come from prayer, it comes from calculation. The city enforces survival through obedience and organization rather than mercy. Those outside the system vanish. Those within persist only by conforming completely. By every known ethical rule, this is monstrous. Entire districts are sacrificed to protect the core. Labourers drown, children are lost, families are broken. Death is a variable to be managed, survival a procedure to be followed. Humanity is reduced to inputs and outputs, lives recorded and erased like numbers in clay. Yet the city's logic prevails. Canals channel the flood efficiently, key structures are reinforced in advance. Exhausted labourers perform tasks with mechanical precision, turning desperation into order. Every moment is pre-calculated, every effort coordinated. The city absorbs catastrophe like a living machine. By every known rule of history, this should have ended Uruk forever. Neighbouring cities crumble under far less pressure. Entire regions vanish beneath similar floods. Yet Uruk survives, almost unnaturally. Its endurance is not celebrated. It is studied, feared, and whispered about as beyond comprehension. Inside, the weight of inevitability presses on every citizen. Survival is conditional, death is procedural. Every name matters, every action is recorded. The city itself dictates life and death. Fear, hunger, and exhaustion are instruments of control. Obedience is instinctive. By every known rule of natural order, this should have been the final test. And yet the city persists, not as a triumph, but as an experiment in absolute survival. Chaos has been quantified, catastrophe harnessed, mortality absorbed into the system. The flood, which should have erased everything, becomes a testament to the cold, unyielding logic that governs Uruk. By every known rule of survival, this is impossible. Yet here it stands. By every known rule of contagion, this wave of disease should have reduced Uruk to ruins. Fevers rise, sores fester, and death creeps through crowded streets. Dense populations, contaminated water, and overworked labourers create a perfect storm. History demonstrates repeatedly that epidemics of this scale decimate urban centres, leaving survivors scattered and fractured. Yet Uruk endures. The tablets reflect the crisis with a chilling detachment. Each sick individual is logged, every district accounted for, and labourers reassigned to critical tasks. Quarantine, if applied, is not mercy. It is method. Families are divided to preserve essential workers. The dead are erased from records without emotion. Survival is determined by registration, not morality. By every known psychological rule, fear should have sparked rebellion, panic or flight. Exhaustion and grief should have fractured loyalty. Hunger and disease should have driven people to chaos. Instead, obedience intensifies. Life depends entirely on compliance with the system. Every act, every breath, every movement is subsumed into the machine of survival. Leadership acts with absolute detachment. Decisions are operational, not moral. Labour rotations continue. Water and food distributions are recalculated daily. Casualties are accepted as predictable losses. The city functions not as a collection of individuals, but as a single, adaptive organism designed to outlast catastrophe. By every known ethical framework, this is monstrous. Entire households vanish to protect the system. Children die to sustain labour forces. Elders are sacrificed to maintain continuity. Humanity is quantified. Individual lives are variables. The system is absolute. And yet even as the plague rages, Uruk absorbs it into its operations. Streets are reorganised. Canals and pumps function despite sickness. Soldiers remain on duty. Work continues. Obedience becomes instinct. Survival is a procedure, not a chance. By every known rule of epidemiology, the city should collapse. Neighbouring regions fall with far less pressure. Villages scatter. Urban centres vanish. Yet Uruk persists. Its endurance is no miracle, but the product of ruthless organisation, precise record-keeping, and the subordination of individual life to systemic continuity. Fear is omnipresent. Every citizen knows that survival is conditional, determined by adherence to assignments, registration, and the ledger. Deviation from protocol risks erasure, and erasure is indistinguishable from death. The plague amplifies this reality. By every known rule of human endurance, the population should break beneath relentless mortality. Yet it persists, it labours, it survives. Every death is incorporated into the system, every life leveraged for continuity. Individuality is absorbed, humanity quantified. By every known rule of natural order, such resilience is impossible. Yet Uruk persists. The epidemic, which should have destroyed the city, becomes proof of a new kind of survival. One where fear, death, and obedience are tools, where catastrophe is anticipated, and where life is conditional, measured, and enforced. By every known rule of survival, this is impossible. Yet here it stands. By every known rule of warfare, this attack should have ended Uruk. A coalition of rival city-states, armed with weapons far superior in number and strength, marches to the gates. Siege engines groan under their loads. Thousands of warriors swarm toward the city walls. Chaos and fire are expected. Yet Uruk does not flinch. It responds with a level of precision that defies comprehension. The tablets document every defensive measure in meticulous detail. Archers rotate in shifts calculated to prevent exhaustion. Gates are reinforced at exact intervals. Key districts are evacuated or fortified. Water and rations are distributed according to a protocol refined over generations of crisis. Death is anticipated, survival is procedural. By every known rule of siegecraft, defenders should collapse under sustained pressure. Supplies should run out. Morale should crumble. Yet the city operates like a single organism, absorbing blows, redirecting forces, and countering weakness with mechanical efficiency. Every assault is neutralized before it escalates. The invaders, confident in their overwhelming numbers, advance methodically and fail. Canals, mud, and traps funnel attackers into lethal bottlenecks. Every mistake is punished instantly. Confusion spreads among their ranks. Coordination falters. Panic seeds itself where logic predicted confidence. Inside Uruk, leadership acts with absolute detachment. Every district is monitored, every unit replenished, every loss recorded. Human life is secondary to continuity. By every known ethical standard, this is monstrous. By every known military standard, it is flawless. The gods, though present in ritual and tablets, do not intervene. Authority resides in the system itself. Survival depends on obedience, labour, and registration. Victory is human, operational, and inevitable, not divine. The city is a weapon, a network of streets, walls, canals, and schedules, all engineered to outlast catastrophe. By every known rule of logic, survival under these circumstances is impossible. By every known rule of history, Uruk should be erased. Yet it endures. The siege is absorbed, chaos neutralized, mortality integrated into the system. Hunger, exhaustion, and death are variables accounted for in advance. The people fight not for glory, not for honor, but because compliance is survival. Every act, every movement, every breath is dictated by the system. Every life is expendable yet recorded. Every district functions as both shield and engine. By every known rule of human history, this should be the final battle. Yet Uruk survives. It is not a triumph, it is an experiment in absolute endurance. Catastrophe is quantified, mortality becomes strategy, obedience is weaponized. And the city, standing battered but unbroken, proves that survival under impossible odds is not a magic, it is ruthless calculation executed flawlessly. By every known rule of agriculture, this year should have brought Uruk to its knees. The Euphrates recedes once more, leaving salted fields and dead crops. Grain stores deplete, livestock perish, heat and dust choke the streets. Hunger gnaws at bodies already weakened by decades of labour, plague and siege. History predicts that such cumulative strain fractures societies, scatters populations, and collapses cities. Yet Uruk endures. The tablets detail every ration with relentless precision. Priority is assigned to workers and defenders. Non-essential labourers are removed from roles, their absence tacitly accepted. Food is distributed not as charity but as a tool of control. Every mouth accounted for, every meal a strategic calculation. Hunger is transformed into obedience, survival becomes procedural. By every known psychological rule, desperation should provoke rebellion. Panic should spread through the streets. Exhaustion should dissolve loyalty, yet the population conforms. Every citizen internalizes the system. Fear of erasure surpasses hunger. Obedience becomes instinctive. Life is contingent upon registration, labor, and compliance. Leadership acts without hesitation. Laborers are reassigned, canals maintained, repairs executed with mechanical efficiency. Sacrifices are made deliberately. Certain districts are deprioritized to sustain the core. Deaths are anticipated, calculated, and recorded. By every known ethical framework, this is monstrous. By every known survival rule, it is genius. Even the gods present in ritual and inscription remain abstract. Their authority is symbolic. The city does not pray for relief, it implements it through relentless calculation. Mortality becomes a variable, survival a procedure, and human life an input in a vast, unforgiving system. By every known historical precedent, famine should destroy even the most organized city. Neighboring regions collapse, villages vanish. Yet Uruk thrives, almost unnaturally. Its endurance is no miracle. It is the product of the precise record-keeping, ruthless organization, and the subordination of humanity to systemic necessity. Within the city, the cost is invisible to those in control but painfully real to the people who live it. Children starve while laborers continue work. Families are split to optimize survival. Human life is abstracted into numbers on clay tablets. Death is absorbed as routine. Every survivor becomes part of a machine that cannot pause, falter, or fail. And by every known rule of natural order, this should be the breaking point. Yet the city persists. It absorbs catastrophe as though designed for nothing else. Hunger becomes a tool. Fear becomes discipline. Death becomes predictable. Continuity is absolute. Every act, every decision, every breath is subservient to survival. Individuality is erased. Humanity is quantified. By every known rule of survival, this should be impossible. Yet Uruk endures. By every known rule of oppression, this is where Uruk should have torn itself apart. Decades of famine, plague, siege, and relentless labor have accumulated into an unstoppable pressure. Streets should be barricaded. Walls should be scaled. Gates should be torn down. History shows that sustained suffering inevitably sparks rebellion. Yet Uruk responds not with chaos, but with relentless calculation. The tablets record dissent as numbers. Missing labourers, delayed rations, minor infractions. Resistance is quantified. Punishment is systematic. Names disappear from the rolls. Districts are monitored for anomalies. Every attempt at rebellion is anticipated, contained and neutralised before it can spread. By every known psychological principle, despair should fuel uprising. Fear should drive people to action. Exhaustion should dissolve loyalty. Instead, compliance intensifies. Survival is no longer personal, it is a function of adherence to the system. Every act, every breath, every movement is subsumed into the machinery of survival. Leadership operates with absolute detachment. Task forces are deployed to rebellious districts. Workers are removed from rations, effectively erasing them from protection. Public punishment is rare. The threat of erasure suffices. Every disappearance reinforces obedience. Every act of compliance validates the system. The gods, though present in ritual and inscriptions, remain abstract. Authority is encoded into labor, fear, and the ledger. Survival depends on adherence, not divine intervention. The rebellion exposes a fundamental truth. Life exists only within the parameters of the system. Those outside vanish. By every known ethical standard, this is monstrous. Families are broken, children starve, elders disappear, individual lives are secondary to continuity. Humanity is reduced to inputs and outputs, each life measured against the demands of the system. Yet the rebellion does more than fail. It teaches. Fear becomes internalized. Compliance becomes instinctive. Hunger and suffering are transformed into obedience. Every movement, every breath, every labouring body becomes part of the machine that sustains the city. By every known rule of human endurance, this should have fractured the population irreparably, yet it does not. The city converts suffering into efficiency, chaos into order, despair into productivity. Outside observers, if any survive, are bewildered. Their settlements crumble under far less pressure. Uruk thrives unnaturally. Its survival is the product of meticulous control over population, labour, resources, and fear. By every known rule of human history, the revolt should have been the final test, yet Uruk persists. It survives not by heroics, not by divine favour, but through the absolute logic of order imposed on chaos. Death and suffering are tools. Fear is discipline. Obedience is weaponized. The city, standing intact, proves that survival under impossible odds is not magic. It is execution perfected. By every known rule of agriculture and climate, this season should have destroyed Uruk. The Euphrates retreats to depths unseen in living memory. Fields crack and die. Wells run dry. Livestock collapse under the unrelenting sun. Hunger gnaws at already weakened bodies. Neighbouring regions crumble under far less strain. History insists that droughts of this magnitude erase cities. Yet Uruk endures. The tablets detail every drop of water with unflinching precision. Pools are rationed, canals prioritised, labourers redistributed. Sacrifices are deliberate, survival calculated. Hunger is transformed into compliance. Life is no longer about choice, it is about procedure. Every person knows their function, every district its role. Death is a variable, survival a protocol. By every known psychological rule, desperation should provoke revolt. Exhaustion should fracture loyalty. Panic should engulf the streets. Yet obedience intensifies. Fear is internalized. Hunger becomes a discipline, not a rebellion. Survival depends entirely on adherence to the system, not chance or courage. Leadership acts with mechanical detachment. Labourers are reassigned instantly, canals are maintained. Repairs executed without hesitation. Certain districts are deprioritized to maintain core functions. Death is expected, accounted for and recorded. Humanity is abstracted into numbers, continuity becomes absolute. Even the gods present in ritual and tablet offer no intervention. Relief does not come from prayer, but from calculation. Mortality is absorbed into the city's systems. Survival is procedural. Individual life is subordinate to the preservation of the whole. By every known rule of history, this drought should have ended Uruk. Villages crumble, cities fracture, entire regions vanish. Yet the city persists, almost unnaturally. Its endurance is no miracle. It is the product of ruthless organization, precise record-keeping, and the subordination of human life to systemic necessity. Within the streets, the weight of inevitability presses on every citizen. Survival is conditional. Death is procedural. Every action is absorbed into the ledger. Obedience is instinct. Fear, hunger, and exhaustion are instruments of control. Life is managed as a resource. By every known rule of endurance, the population should collapse. Yet it persists. It labours. It survives. Every death incorporated into the system. Every survivor absorbed. Individuality erased. Humanity quantified. By every known rule of natural order, this should be impossible. Yet Uruk endures. The drought, which should have ended everything, becomes proof of the city's extraordinary capacity for absolute survival. Catastrophe is quantified. Mortality becomes strategy. Obedience is weaponized. By every known rule of contagion, this outbreak should have erased Uruk from the map. Disease spreads swiftly through crowded streets, contaminates water, and attacks exhausted bodies weakened by decades of famine, plague, and war. History shows that urban centres under such pressure collapse, populations scatter, and cultures vanish. Yet Uruk endures. The tablets chronicle the crisis with a cold precision that ignores human grief. Every sick individual is logged, every district monitored, and labourers reassigned to critical tasks. Quarantine is enforced not as mercy but as strategy. Certain households are sacrificed to preserve essential workers. Death is accounted for as an expected variable. Survival depends on registration, not morality. By every known psychological principle, fear should ignite revolt, panic, or mass flight. Exhaustion and grief should erode loyalty. Hunger and disease should break the human spirit. Instead, obedience intensifies. Life is procedural. Every act, every breath, every movement is absorbed into the city's machinery. Leadership operates with absolute detachment. Labor rotations continue. Food and water allocations recalculated daily. Casualties are absorbed into the ledger. Human life is secondary to continuity. By every known ethical framework, this is monstrous. By every known rule of survival, it is perfection. Even the gods inscribed on countless clay tablets remain abstract. Their authority is symbolic, not active. Relief comes not from divine favor, but from unyielding calculation. Death is a predictable variable. Life is conditional. Humanity is reduced to inputs and outputs, each individual measured against the needs of the system. Despite the relentless epidemic, the city absorbs catastrophe into its operations. Streets are reorganized. Canals and water systems function despite sickness. Soldiers and laborers continue duties. Obedience becomes instinct. Survival is a procedure, not a chance. By every known rule of epidemiology, the city should collapse. Neighbouring settlements crumble under less pressure. Villages vanish. Yet Uruk persists. Its endurance is no miracle. It is the product of meticulous record-keeping, ruthless organisation, and the subordination of humanity to systemic necessity. Fear is omnipresent. Every citizen understands that survival is conditional. Deviation from protocol risks erasure, and erasure is indistinguishable from death. The epidemic reinforces this truth. By every known rule of human endurance, the population should shatter under relentless mortality. Yet it persists, it labours, it survives. Every death incorporated into the system, every life leveraged for continuity. Individuality is absorbed, humanity quantified. By every known rule of natural order, such resilience is impossible. Yet Uruk endures. The epidemic, which should have destroyed the city, becomes proof that survival can be absolute when fear, death, and obedience are weaponized, when catastrophe is anticipated, and when life itself is reduced to calculation. By every known rule of warfare, this assault should have obliterated Uruk. A coalition of rival city-states marches with overwhelming numbers, siege engines, and relentless resolve. Arrows darken the sky. Gates are battered. Walls shudder under repeated blows. History dictates that overwhelming force ends even the most organized defenders. Yet Uruk responds with precision that borders on the unnatural. The tablets record defensive operations in excruciating detail. Archers rotate shifts to prevent exhaustion. Gates are reinforced at calculated intervals. Critical districts are fortified. Rations and water are distributed according to protocols honed through decades of crisis. Death is expected, survival is procedural. The city fights not with heroics, but with meticulous execution. By every known rule of siegecraft, defenders should collapse, supplies should dwindle, morale should fail. Yet Uruk operates as a single adaptive organism, absorbing blows, redirecting forces, and countering weakness with mechanical efficiency. Every assault is neutralized before it escalates. The invaders, confident in numbers and technology, advance methodically and fail. Flooded canals and traps funnel attackers into lethal bottlenecks. Confusion spreads, coordination falters. Panic roots itself where logic predicted confidence. Losses mount faster than reinforcements can replace them. Inside the city, leadership acts with absolute detachment. Every district monitored, every unit replenished, every casualty logged. Human life is secondary to continuity. By every known ethical framework, this is monstrous. By every known military framework, it is flawless. The gods, present in ritual and on clay tablets, remain abstract. Authority lies in the system itself. Survival depends on labour, registration, and obedience. The city has become a weapon. Streets, walls, canals, and schedules all engineered to outlast catastrophe. By every known rule of logic, survival under these circumstances is impossible. By every known rule of history, Uruk should be erased. Yet it persists. The sieges absorbed, chaos neutralized, mortality integrated into the system. Hunger, exhaustion, and death are all variables accounted for in advance. The people fight not for glory or honor, but because survival demands it. Every act, every movement, every breath is dictated by the system. Every life is expendable yet recorded. Every district functions as both shield and engine. By every known rule of human history, this should be the final battle. Yet Uruk survives. It is not triumph, it is evidence of absolute endurance. Catastrophe is quantified. Mortality is strategy. Obedience is weaponized. The city, battered but unbroken, proves that survival under impossible odds is execution perfected. By every known rule of hydrology, this deluge should have destroyed the city completely. The Euphrates overflows beyond precedent. Canals breach. Mud brick walls collapse under relentless pressure. Streets become rivers of debris, corpses and mud. Grain stores are ruined. Livestock perish. History demonstrates repeatedly that urban centres on floodplains, without modern engineering, cannot survive such calamities. Yet Uruk endures. The tablets detail the crisis with unflinching precision. Water levels are measured. Key districts prioritise for reinforcement. Labourers reassigned instantly. Sacrifices are calculated. Pools are rationed. Canals are dredged. Every district functions as a unit in a vast system of survival. Death is expected. Survival procedural. By every known psychological principle, panic should have consumed the streets. Families should have fled. Morale should have collapsed. Hunger and exhaustion should have fueled rebellion. Yet obedience intensifies. Compliance becomes instinct. Survival is dictated by registration, labour, and adherence to the system. Leadership acts with mechanical detachment. Labourers continue work despite exhaustion. Canals and pumps function despite the deluge. Certain districts are deprioritised to protect the core. Human life is accounted for but expendable. By every known ethical framework, this is monstrous. By every known rule of survival, it is flawless. Even the gods present in ritual and tablet do not intervene. Relief comes not from divine favour but from calculation. Mortality is absorbed into the city's systems. Life is procedural. Individual existence is secondary to the preservation of the whole. By every known rule of history, this flood should have ended Uruk. Neighbouring settlements collapse, villages vanish, entire regions are lost. Yet the city persists, almost unnaturally. Its endurance is no miracle, it is the product of meticulous organisation, ruthless record-keeping, and the subordination of humanity to systemic necessity. Inside, the cost is invisible to those in control but painfully real to the population. Families are split, children are lost, labour continues relentlessly, death is incorporated into the system. Every survivor becomes part of a machine that cannot falter. By every known rule of natural order, this should have been the breaking point. Yet Uruk endures. The flood, which should have destroyed everything, becomes proof of the city's extraordinary capacity for absolute survival. Catastrophe is quantified. Mortality becomes strategy. Obedience is weaponized. The city, battered but unbroken, proves that survival under impossible odds is not chance, it is perfect execution. By every known rule of agriculture, this year should have brought the city to ruin. The Euphrates recedes, leaving salted, cracked fields. Grain stores dwindle to nothing. Livestock die. Hunger gnaws at bodies already weakened by decades of plague, siege, and labour. History shows that famine of this magnitude fractures societies, disperses populations, and destroys urban centres. Yet Uruk endures. The tablets record every ration, every allocation, with merciless precision. Priority goes to workers and defenders. Non-essential labourers are removed from records, their absence tacitly accepted. Hunger is transformed into compliance. Survival becomes procedural, not hopeful. Every citizen understands their role, every district its function. Death is expected, survival is mandated. By every known psychological principle, desperation should provoke rebellion. Exhaustion should dissolve loyalty. Panic should spread through the streets. Yet obedience intensifies. Fear surpasses hunger. Compliance becomes instinct. Life is conditional, contingent upon registration, labour, and adherence to the system. Leadership acts with mechanical detachment. Labourers are reassigned. Canals are maintained. Repairs executed with precision. Certain districts are deprioritised to maintain the city's core. Death is accounted for and loss absorbed into the system. Humanity is quantified. Continuity is absolute. Even the gods present in ritual and inscribed on clay remain abstract. Relief does not come from prayer but from calculation. Mortality is integrated into every plan. Life is a variable. Individual survival is subordinate to systemic preservation. By every known rule of history, this famine should have ended Uruk. Neighbouring settlements collapse under far less strain. Villages vanish. Yet the city survives, almost unnaturally. Its endurance is no miracle. It is the product of meticulous organisation, precise record-keeping and ruthless subordination of human life to systemic necessity. Inside, the weight of inevitability presses on every citizen. Survival is conditional, death is procedural. Every act, every breath, every movement is absorbed into the ledger. Obedience is instinctive. Hunger, exhaustion, and fear are instruments of control. Life is managed as a resource. By every known rule of human endurance, this should have been the breaking point. Yet Uruk persists. The famine, which should have destroyed everything, becomes evidence of a system that converts catastrophe into order, suffering into compliance, and mortality into a tool of survival. By every known rule of survival, this is impossible. Yet here it stands. By every known rule of oppression, this is where Uruk should have fractured. Decades of famine, plague, siege, and drought have accumulated into unbearable pressure. Streets should be barricaded, walls should be scaled, gates should be torn down. History dictates that cumulative suffering inevitably ignites revolt. Yet Uruk responds not with chaos, but with unyielding calculation. The tablets record descent not with narrative, but with numbers. Missing labourers, delayed rations, minor infractions. Resistance is quantified. Punishment is systematic. Names vanish from rolls. Districts are monitored for anomalies. Every attempt at rebellion is anticipated, contained and neutralised before it can spread. By every known psychological principle, despair should fuel uprising. Fear should drive people to action. Exhaustion should erode loyalty. Instead, compliance intensifies. Survival is no longer personal, it is dictated by the system. Every act, every breath, every movement is subsumed into the machinery of survival. Leadership acts with absolute detachment. Task forces are deployed to rebellious districts. Workers are removed from rations, effectively erasing them from the system's protection. Public punishment is rare. The threat of erasure suffices. Every disappearance reinforces obedience. Every act of compliance validates the system. The gods, inscribed in countless clay tablets, remain abstract. Authority is encoded into labour, fear and registration. Survival depends on adherence, not divine favour. The rebellion exposes a fundamental truth. Life exists only within the parameters of the system. Those outside vanish. By every known ethical framework, this is monstrous. Families are split. Children starve. Elders disappear. Individual life is secondary to continuity. Humanity is reduced to variables. Survival becomes absolute. Yet the rebellion does more than fail. It teaches. Fear becomes internalized. Compliance becomes instinct. Hunger and suffering are transformed into obedience. Every movement, every breath, every labouring body is absorbed into the machine that sustains the city. By every known rule of history, this should have been the final fracture. Yet Uruk persists. It survives not by heroics, not by divine favour, but through the absolute logic of order imposed upon chaos. Death and suffering are instruments. Fear is discipline. Obedience is weaponized. The city, standing intact, proves that survival under impossible odds is execution perfected. By every known rule of history, this is where the city should vanish. Centuries of famine, plague, siege, drought, rebellion and flood have converged. The population is exhausted, the infrastructure battered, and resources stripped to the bone. Neighbouring settlements have already fallen. The Euphrates itself has shifted, leaving canals dry and fields salted. Every precedent predicts total collapse. Yet Uruk endures. The tablets record survival with cold precision. Every ration, every labour rotation, every casualty logged. Districts are prioritised for maintenance. Sacrifices are made deliberately. Death is expected. Survival is procedural. Humanity is quantified. Life becomes calculation. Every act, every movement, every breath is directed by the system. By every known psychological rule, panic should consume the streets. Families should flee, loyalty should dissolve, exhaustion, grief, and fear should have fractured the city long ago. Yet obedience intensifies. Compliance is instinct. Survival is not hope. It is the execution of orders. Every individual, every district, every system functions as part of a vast, unyielding mechanism. Leadership operates with absolute detachment. Canals are dredged, walls reinforced, labour reassigned. Certain districts are sacrificed to protect the core. Death is absorbed as a variable, not a tragedy. By every known ethical standard, this is monstrous. By every known tactical standard, it is flawless. Even the gods, present in ritual and inscribed on clay, remain abstract. Relief comes not from prayer, but from calculation. Mortality is a predictable factor. Life is conditional. Individual survival is subordinate to systemic preservation. By every known rule of human history, Uruk should have ended centuries ago. Neighbouring cities crumble, entire regions vanish. Yet the city persists, almost unnaturally. Its endurance is not miracle. It is ruthless organisation, precise record-keeping, and the absolute subordination of humanity to systemic necessity. Within the city, the people move like shadows of themselves. Fear, hunger, exhaustion, and grief are absorbed into the system. Obedience is instinctive. Survival is procedural. Individuality is erased. Every death is calculated, every life recorded, every action absorbed into the machinery of continuity. By every known rule of natural order, this should be impossible. Yet Uruk endures. The city, which should have been erased countless times, stands as a testament to the extreme of human survival. Catastrophe has been quantified. Mortality has become strategy. Obedience has been weaponized. Chaos is absorbed. Death is calculated. And in this final unbroken city, humanity survives, not by chance, not by divine favour, but by the unrelenting logic of order imposed on impossible odds. By every known rule of survival, this should be impossible. Yet here it stands.